Part 1. They say you never notice the moment a house stops being a home. The doors still close, the lights still flick on, but something essential goes missing. I just hadn't figured out what, yet. Our marriage was the kind most people envied, or so it seemed. 8 years in, people still described us as solid. We had the routines, Friday night takeout and Netflix marathons, lazy Sunday mornings where I'd get up early to grab Lauren's complicated latte order, almond milk, 2 pumps of vanilla, light foam, no whip. She'd joke that even the barista couldn't remember it, but I always did. We had inside jokes. The kind that outlast the honeymoon phase and make you think, yeah, we're doing something right. At least, that's what I thought. The first change was so small it could have slipped by unnoticed. She stopped reaching for my hand while we watched TV. Innocent enough. People get comfortable, right? After a while, you stop acting like newlyweds. That's normal. Then her work hours got longer. Project deadlines, she'd say. She worked as a project manager, so it made sense. I didn't question it. Not at first. Then came the phone. She used to leave it lying around without a second thought. Now it was always face down. Silenced. When it buzzed, and it buzzed a lot, her hand would dart out like a striking snake, flipping it over. If I happened to glance at it, she'd flash me that smile. The one that says, it's nothing. Don't worry. So I didn't worry. I convinced myself not to. That's what love is, right? Trusting when things seem off. But the feeling grew. The quiet tension in the house stretched thin, like a rope fraying at the ends. The real crack came at a dinner party. We were at her friend Tara's new place. Everyone was laughing, drinking wine, swapping stories. She drifted to the other side of the room with some of her work friends. I stayed back, stuck making small talk with a guy who wouldn't shut up about his crypto portfolio. Out of habit, my eyes found her across the room. She was laughing. At first, I thought she was sharing a joke with me from afar, like we used to do. But no, she was laughing at me. I saw it in the tilt of her head, the sharp grin, the way her eyes flicked my way and then back to her friends. It wasn't cruel. Just dismissive. Like I was some well-meaning fool. That stung in a way I didn't expect. Still, I brushed it off. Told myself not to read into things. The following Thursday shattered that illusion. It was an ordinary evening. I was fixing the loose handle on the bathroom door, a chore I'd been putting off for weeks. Lauren was in the bedroom, on the phone. I wasn't trying to listen. I was just passing by. Then I heard her. Honestly, he's just my roommate at this point. A pause. A short laugh. He doesn't even notice. I stopped cold. My hand tightened around the screwdriver. My heart raced, but the rest of me felt frozen. Just my roommate. That phrase hit harder than any argument we'd ever had. Harder than slammed doors or cold shoulders. I wasn't even angry at first. Just hollow. Like someone had scooped out my insides and left the shell standing there, blinking. I backed away quietly, not wanting to alert her. Not ready to confront. Not yet. That night, I lay beside her in bed, staring at the ceiling. She slept easily. Too easily. Like someone without a care in the world. Meanwhile, my mind replayed every sacrifice I'd made to keep us together. The overtime shifts to pay for our vacations. The times I held my tongue during fights because keeping the peace seemed more important than being right. The meals cooked. The date nights planned. The countless times I'd been the steady hand when she was overwhelmed. Now, none of that mattered. Because in her eyes, I wasn't a partner. I was a placeholder. A roommate. Someone taking up space until something or someone better came along. In the morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Same cheerful smile. Same latte order rattled off as I grabbed my keys. Morning, she said brightly. Morning, I echoed, voice steady. But something had shifted inside me. A fracture that wouldn't mend. Not this time. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed to see the shape of what we had become before I decided what came next. And for the first time in 8 years, I understood I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a man standing at the edge of a cliff, finally ready to look down. Part 2. Once you hear the truth, really hear it, you can't unhear it. He's just my roommate. Those 5 words didn't just echo in my mind. They rooted themselves there, poisoning everything that used to feel safe. But I didn't confront Lauren. Not yet. I wasn't ready to be gaslit, wasn't ready for the rehearsed excuses, the dismissive laughs. I'd heard enough stories from friends and coworkers to know how it would go. You're imagining things. It's just work stress. I was venting, not serious. No. This time, I wanted evidence, not feelings. So, I watched. I listened. I took mental notes. The small changes multiplied. She came home later. Work crisis, she'd say. Some nights, she barely made it back before midnight. I knew her company's usual hours. I knew her colleagues. Project deadlines were real, but they didn't explain the perfume lingering on her clothes. Not that perfume. It was bolder, heavier. The one she used to wear when we were dating, the one she claimed made her feel noticed. I noticed. The phone became the center of her world. She held it like it was a lifeline. Locked screens. New passwords. If it buzzed and I happened to glance her way, she'd snatch it up faster than a reflex. When she looked at me, it was as if I wasn't there. Like she was staring through me, past me, at a life where I was just another piece of old furniture. Comfortable. Familiar. Replaceable. I started keeping track. Late nights. New lingerie, tags still hidden at the bottom of the closet. Deleted browser history. Receipts for restaurants we'd never been to together. She didn't even bother hiding her lies carefully. That's how sure she was that I wouldn't notice. That's how far she believed she had pushed me into the role of roommate. Passive. Unaware. But I noticed. One Friday evening, she claimed she had a team dinner. Said it would run late. I nodded and watched her leave in an outfit she never wore for work. She kissed me on the cheek like she was running errands, not heading out for the night. 10 minutes later, I slipped out too. Quiet. Careful. I followed her car to a restaurant on the far side of town. Not a work dinner. Not unless her entire team consisted of one man in a crisp shirt who leaned in close, smiled like a man who knew he didn't have to worry about consequences. They sat by the window. I stayed in the shadows across the street, hands clenched in my jacket pockets. They laughed. They toasted. His hand brushed hers once, then lingered. She didn't pull away. I didn't need to see more. I already knew. But seeing it, that was different. That was confirmation. When Lauren finally came home that night, she smelled like cheap wine and guilt masked by mints. She slipped into bed beside me without a word. I stayed still. Silent. Roommates don't ask questions. The next day, I began gathering real proof. Not just my observations, solid evidence. I searched for the old camcorder from our vacation days, bought a new SD card, and found places to hide it where it would never be noticed. I installed a discreet app on the home Wi-Fi router to track unfamiliar devices. I even checked the GPS history on her car. The patterns were undeniable. Late nights. Always near the same hotel. A boutique place. Not too fancy. Not too cheap. A place where secrets stayed quiet and nobody asked questions. Then came the phone records. She'd gotten smarter, deleting messages, using encrypted apps. But she couldn't erase call logs entirely. One number repeated. Over and over. I looked it up. It was registered to B&M Consulting. A fake front, likely, but I dug deeper. Traced it back to a man named Grant Holloway. Divorced. Mid-40s. Vice president of a local tech firm. His LinkedIn profile showed him attending the same conferences Lauren had been going to lately. I didn't recognize the name. I recognized the type. A few days later, when she left for another team dinner, I followed again. Same hotel. Same room number. I watched from the parking lot as she greeted him in the lobby with a kiss she hadn't given me in years. That night, when she finally returned home and slipped into bed beside me, I didn't move. Didn't speak. Because something had changed. The anger wasn't raw anymore. It was cold. Controlled. Focused. I wasn't going to be the fool who raged and begged. I wasn't going to be the man who confronted and got spun in circles. I was going to be the man who knew. The man who prepared. The man who would not stay another night as just a roommate. Part 3. There's a strange relief that comes when denial dies. The first stage was doubt, then suspicion, then watching. But now, as I sat alone in the living room with the evidence gathered piece by piece, there was no more room for guessing. Lauren wasn't coming home until late again. She told me it was a vendor networking event. I didn't bother to nod or ask questions anymore. That version of me, the trusting, patient husband, had left the building weeks ago. In front of me sat a folder, neatly labeled, quietly damning. Inside, screenshots of call logs to Grant Holloway, photos from the hotel parking lot. Same car, same room, different nights. A copy of the GPS tracking record showing patterns only the truly naive could ignore. Receipts, restaurant bills, boutique hotel charges disguised under corporate expense accounts. A printout of a text thread pulled from the backup of her old phone, the one she forgot to reset before donating it. Flirty, confident, entitled, and worst of all, a photograph from just 4 nights ago. Lauren in a navy blue dress I once bought her, standing far too close to Grant at a charity gala, his hand low on her back, her head tilted up, eyes sparkling in a way I hadn't seen in years. I had enough. Not for a confrontation, for a conclusion. The rage I'd expected to feel, the urge to scream, accuse, demand explanations never came. Instead, I felt calm, like a man who'd finally accepted the truth after fighting it for far too long. There was no fixing this. No counseling. No late-night heart-to-heart where promises are made and soon broken. I got up from the couch and walked quietly into the bedroom. Lauren's side of the closet was still a riot of dresses, heels, and scarves. My side tidy, minimal. It made the task easier. I pulled out a suitcase. Then another. The first held the basics, a week's worth of clothes, toiletries, and the sentimental items worth keeping. My father's watch. A set of cufflinks from our wedding day. A photo of my mom and me fishing when I was 6. The second suitcase was practical. Important documents, financial statements, and the portable hard drive where I'd been backing up everything for the last month. As I packed, my mind wasn't racing. It was methodical. I thought about every overtime shift I'd worked to fund our vacations. The nights I'd stayed up with her during her father's illness. The little surprises I'd planned. Flowers on random Wednesdays, anniversary trips, silly scavenger hunts around the house. All of it had faded into irrelevance. None of it had kept her anchored. When the suitcases were zipped, I sat down on the edge of the bed. The room was silent except for the hum of the ceiling fan. I could almost convince myself it was just another night. Just another long workday where we'd both go to bed without much conversation. But tonight was different. For the first time in 8 years, I wasn't packing for a trip or a temporary break. I was packing to leave a role I'd never auditioned for, the silent, oblivious roommate. At exactly 11:47 p.m., I heard her car pull into the driveway, tires crunching softly against the gravel. A minute later, the front door opened and closed. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor. I didn't move. "Hey," she called from the living room, casual as ever. "Sorry, ran late." That vendor event was chaotic. She didn't walk into the bedroom right away. Probably assumed I was already asleep, or that I'd long since stopped caring. She wasn't entirely wrong. I heard the fridge door open, the clink of a wine bottle against a glass. She still played the same game, coming home late, pouring herself a drink, and pretending the walls of our marriage weren't paper-thin and cracking. Eventually, she padded into the bedroom. Stopped short when she saw the suitcases. Her face shifted. Surprise. Then confusion. Then guarded suspicion. "What's this?" she asked, voice carefully neutral. I stood up, met her gaze without flinching. "I won't stay another night living as just your roommate." Her eyes widened, but I didn't wait for the lies or the justifications. "I know everything, Lauren. The late nights. The hotel. Grant." The wine glass in her hand trembled slightly. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. And for the first time, I felt no urge to fill the silence for her. I grabbed the suitcases and walked past her. Down the hallway. Out the front door. No shouting. No last-minute pleas. No drama. Just the quiet closing of a chapter that had been dying for months. As I reached my car and loaded the bags into the trunk, I glanced back once. She stood frozen in the doorway, framed by the warm light of the living room. The same light I used to associate with comfort, partnership, home. Now, it was just another room in a house where I no longer belonged. I slid behind the wheel, started the engine, and drove into the night towards something uncertain, yes, but also towards something mine. Freedom. Part 4. Leaving wasn't the hard part. Staying gone, that was where most men stumbled. I wasn't going to be one of them. Once the door closed behind me that night, I didn't just walk away from Lauren. I walked away from the version of myself that tolerated being minimized, ignored, and sidelined. No more standing in the shadows while she built a life that didn't include me. No more waiting for apologies that would never come. The first thing I did was check into a hotel. Nothing fancy, just a clean room with 4 walls that didn't feel like they were closing in. I sat on the edge of the bed, letting the quiet settle. No more secondhand perfume clinging to the sheets. No more distant footsteps padding through the house at midnight. Freedom didn't feel loud or dramatic. It felt still, solid. Then, I opened my laptop. I already knew what to do. I'd been planning it in my head for weeks, even before the suitcases came out. Step 1, finances. I logged into every joint account. I wasn't there to drain them. That wasn't my style. But I froze the accounts temporarily, blocking any large withdrawals or transfers without joint consent. I opened a new checking account in my name only. My paychecks would now land somewhere she couldn't touch. Step 2. Housing. I contacted a real estate agent the next morning and arranged to view 2 apartments. Modest, but clean and in a quiet neighborhood. After 8 years in a house filled with secrets, I didn't want luxury. I wanted peace. By noon, I'd signed a short-term lease. 6 months. No need to rush big decisions. The apartment smelled of fresh paint and possibility. Step 3. Legal. I wasn't going to let anger control this next phase. I called a lawyer, a referral from a coworker who'd been through a divorce himself the year before. We scheduled a consultation for the following week. I gathered all my financial documents, the evidence I'd compiled, and outlined my expectations. A fair split. No drawn-out war. Just clean, clinical separation. Step 4. Communication, or lack thereof. I turned off my phone for 2 full days. When I finally powered it back on, there were 37 missed calls from Lauren and 14 text messages. They followed a predictable pattern. Where are you? We need to talk. This isn't how adults handle things. If you wanted to separate, you should have said something. Please don't make this worse than it needs to be. And then the shift. Fine. Be immature. But the bills still need to be paid. You're being selfish. I didn't expect this from you. Not once did she say she was sorry. Not once did she ask how I was. Every message was about control, expectation, entitlement. I didn't respond. By day 3, her calls had slowed. Silence became her latest strategy. But silence, I found, was my ally now. Step 5. The clean break. I returned to the house once, early in the morning while she was at work. My lawyer had advised me to collect any remaining personal belongings to avoid future conflicts. I packed what little I hadn't taken the first night, tools from the garage, a few books, and family heirlooms that mattered to me. I left everything else. No note. No drama. I did, however, take down the framed photo of our wedding day that sat on the hallway table. Not to keep. To remove it. To make it clear this was no longer a shared space. That same day, I forwarded my new address to the lawyer. He would handle all official communications going forward. No more late-night texts. No more awkward doorstep conversations. No more staged tears or manipulative speeches. Step 6. Rebuilding. The new apartment wasn't much, plain white walls, modest furnishings, but it was mine. My first night there, I slept deeper than I had in years. No pacing the floor. No waiting up for a partner who was out making memories with someone else. I filled the fridge with simple meals. Bought a new coffee maker. One that didn't remind me of Lauren's complicated latte rituals. I unpacked my books. Arranged my father's watch and wedding cufflinks on a small shelf. Symbols of who I'd been and who I would be again. Freedom didn't roar. It whispered. By the end of the first week, the bills started arriving at the old house. Without my income supporting them, Lauren would feel the shift soon enough. She'd taken for granted the stability I provided, the quiet labor behind the life we built. She assumed I'd keep shouldering burdens even after she cast me as the roommate instead of the partner. She was wrong. My absence wasn't a tantrum. It was a transition. And as I sat in my quiet, modest apartment, no longer a roommate, no longer a placeholder, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Part 5. It's funny. People think the hardest part of leaving is the first step out the door. They're wrong. The hardest part is surviving the silence afterward, the hollow space where a marriage used to be. In that quiet, the real work begins. The first nights in my new apartment were deceptively calm. I'd wake up and forget for a moment where I was. I'd reach across the bed, half expecting to find Lauren's cold shoulder. Instead, I found nothing. And slowly, nothing became a comfort. The weeks passed. She sent fewer texts. The last one came 2 weeks after I left. I'm sorry you feel this way. I thought we could be adults about this. No confession. No ownership. Just more words that translated to I'm only sorry you made this difficult for me. I never responded. Not once. The legal process started like clockwork. My lawyer filed. Her lawyer replied. Her strategy was predictable. Feign surprise, downplay the affair, imply that I'd abandoned the marriage out of emotional instability. She wanted to divide the assets down the middle, but keep the house. She even hinted at spousal support. I'd prepared for all of it. My folder of evidence, photos, call logs, financial records shut down every narrative she tried to spin. There would be no alimony. No battle for sympathy. The facts were steel bars. Cold. Inarguable. When the first mediation session arrived, she finally faced me across a polished conference table. She looked polished herself, a fresh haircut, expensive blouse, a subtle necklace I recognized from our anniversary trip to Savannah. A small piece of me thought she might cry. Apologize. Show something human. She didn't. She was composed. Detached. The same Lauren who'd laughed across a dinner table with a man who wasn't her husband. Her opening words? Can't we avoid making this uglier than it needs to be? That's when I realized. She hadn't lost sleep. She hadn't spent nights pacing an empty apartment questioning her worth. She hadn't felt the humiliation of being quietly replaced. She wasn't mourning the marriage. She was mourning her control over me. The negotiations were swift and merciless. I kept my retirement. I walked away with a fair share of the assets. The house, our house, went to her. Let it rot. Let her fill it with as many secrets and strangers as she liked. I'd already stripped it of its real value, my loyalty. By the time the papers were signed, something in her face finally cracked. A flicker of disbelief. She had counted on me being weak, on me folding, on me missing her enough to compromise. She never understood that the man who'd left was not the man sitting across from her now. My new life wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I got up early, made my own coffee without the almond milk, vanilla pumps, or foam. Just strong, black coffee. I reconnected with old friends, men who'd slipped away during the marriage because they didn't fit into Lauren's curated social circle. I joined a local boxing gym. I threw myself into work, took on projects I once would have declined for fear of disrupting couple time. For the first time in years, my evenings were quiet but not lonely. And then, the final twist arrived. It came from Adam, a friend I hadn't seen much of since my wedding day. We grabbed a beer one Friday night after he heard through the grapevine that I was single again. Halfway through the drink, he leaned forward. There's something I've been sitting on for a while. I didn't know if it was my place. I raised an eyebrow. Go on. You remember that first job Lauren took as a project manager? The one right after your honeymoon? Of course I did. It was her big break. The job that gave us the financial boost to buy the house. Adam's expression hardened. Her supervisor back then, Jason Miles. You remember him? I nodded slowly. He'd been at our wedding. Give a toast. A little too charming, but I never thought much of it. Adam took a breath. Jason told a few of us, years ago, that Lauren had a habit. She got close to higher-ups. Used them to climb. There were rumors, but I didn't want to believe it. None of us did. We thought marriage would change her. A cold weight settled in my gut. And you're telling me now? Because you need to know this wasn't new. Grant wasn't the first. He was just the latest. I nodded. Slowly. Steadily. Thank you. He looked almost relieved, like a burden had lifted from him. But for me, it wasn't a burden. It was a key. The last piece of the puzzle. Lauren's betrayal hadn't been a fall from grace. It had been a pattern. A cycle. I just hadn't seen it. Or maybe I hadn't wanted to. But I saw it now. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. The room was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I thought about the man I used to be. The man who thought loyalty could fix disloyalty. That patience could cure contempt. That silence meant peace. It didn't. Silence could mean surrender. Or it could mean strategy. They had mistaken mine for the former. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the city lights. Not as a man broken. Not as a man left behind. But as a man reborn. They thought I'd be broken. They mistook silence for surrender. I walked away stronger than ever. The end.